Seeing that there are no further comments from the board, I am going to suggest putting together an ad hoc. I am going to call for volunteers now. We can only have a minimum of 2 board members on it, just so you know. Oh. Right?
I'll give it to.
Can we set?
She said no minimum.
No, because then we're having a meeting. You can only have so many.
So I will divert my volunteering to Board Member Cabrera.
I believe a quorum is 4. Is that correct? So that would be up to 3. Oh, and you're also on it?
No, I'm not volunteering to be. So up to 3 board members.
Correct.
But I was going to suggest if we wanted to look at 2 and 2. I'm not opposed. I want to hear. So we had 2 board members 2 public members over here who were interested. In fact, we had all 3 of our
public members.
But if we wanted to, in looking at an ad hoc, if I could just, because we've served on an ad hoc,
yep.
And in the interest of looking at our 2 public members, if we could perhaps look at Board Member Cabrera, perhaps look at Board Member Morcos, and I'm seeing Board Member Pavlovich has her hand up, and I sure hope that means she wants to participate as well. Is that a yes? That's awesome. So we have our 3, and then we're looking for some public members. Anyone here in our audience or on our WebEx want to participate? Can you come up and state your name for the minutes?
Hi, Carlin Daly Rayom. I would be happy to participate.
Carla Day.
Carlin Daly Rayom.
Carlin Day Rayom. Okay, so we have Board Member Pavlovich, we have Board Member Cabrera, we have Vice President Morcos, we have our public member with the beautiful 3 names that I've blown twice, so we're gonna pass. We've got it for the minutes though, right? Okay, and did we have anybody on our WebEx that wanted to participate? In our ad hoc.
It looks like we have Ada, so let me request to unmute Ada again.
Ada Boone Hurl for the minutes. Yes.
Okay, so we have 5 in our ad hoc, and your timelines are that we meet again in May. So just in terms of working backward, what's before you is this language will be provided for you. You will identify, this language will be provided. You will identify and give some recommendations to the board. We would want that at the May meeting. So you'll figure out the schedule and work backwards, and board staff will be following up on this item. Okay.
I guess we need to decide who will be the chair for that committee, and if you're checking a thing, and how many members. But we have to make a motion or not. Oh, we definitely have to make a motion.
To be chair?
It's not me. It's Marcos, Cabrera, and you.
Oh, you're not on it. Is it Beata that's on it? And Mr.
Yes.
Cabrera?
Yes.
Oh, well then we have 2. Let's see who wants to do it. Anybody? Beata, Mr. Cabrera?
Wouldn't the board just vote to refer the matter to the ad hoc committee and the president selects the committee members? We don't have to.
Exactly. That's the direction thank you, Board Member Bookwalter. The direction I was going to suggest in the motion is that we've identified a committee. The board will now vote on that, and I was going to defer to let you all come up with your chairperson. I think I'm sorry to do this, but I need to hear from the executive director that she's identifying that we have to choose a chairperson. I didn't remember the process like that. So does she want to comment?
Yes, the board president selects the committee chairperson.
Okay, great. So in terms of selecting our committee chairperson, we have Board Member Cabrera, we have Board Member Marcos, we have Board Member Pavlovich, we have 2 of our public members. Generally, we refer our chairperson to someone that's on the board, and so who so moved to be the committee chair? Back to the original question that Board Member Pavlovich brought up. Who so moved?
I can do it.
Okay, our chairperson will be Beata Marcos. That would be Vice President Beata Marcos. Her committee members will be Board Member Cabrera, Board Member Pavlovich, Ada Boone-Harrell, and Carlin. Okay, perfect. So we need a motion on that.
I move that we appoint an ad hoc committee to make considerations and actions about the committee member appointment criteria for non-licensees public members, with the committee's members chaired by Vice President Marcos, Board Member Pavlovich, Board Member Cabrera, and the 2 public members.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Do we have any comment from our public? Anyone, any comments in the Q&A?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this motion, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. All right, and it appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you. So if you could go ahead and take the roll, please, Secretary Doe.
Board Member Bookwalter,
Aye.
Board Member Cabrera,
Aye.
Board Member Pavlovich,
Aye.
Vice President Marcos,
Aye.
Secretary Doe, yes, and President Miller.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Perfect. Okay. So just to again set expectation, because I know it's afternoon, I know some people may be hungry. We are going to go through the items and then break for lunch. Item 16 is not, I understand this, just in terms of setting expectation. We're not going to, consideration impossible. 13. Item 14 and 15 are the same, so we're not going to look at item 15. So where we are before us is item number 12, consideration and possible action on appointing disaster preparedness, disaster response ad hoc committee. So what's before us is really to identify if we want an ad hoc committee on disaster preparedness, and if so, do we want to make a motion? Now, as a point, it is not in our packet because really what's before us is to simply put forward. Do we want to, as this board, historically there has been a disaster preparedness committee in the lifetime of this board. There hasn't as of current, and so is this an item, given the recent pandemic, given the things that came up, for example, they might look at the telehealth language, they might look at our involvement in home health, they might make recommendations to the legislative committee. Given the recent events of the pandemic and what has happened, that's how this item came up and came about. So, board thoughts?
Board Member, President Miller, I support that need based on all of the items that you just identified, plus the direction of just healthcare in general.
Any other thoughts?
No, I think we all should be prepared, right? We do live in earthquake country, so we always have to think about that. So, yeah, I think we should have a committee revisit disaster preparedness, disaster response.
And I would agree with that, given all the fires, the earthquakes, the situations that the state has been facing, that we continue having this particular ad hoc committee on emergency preparedness.
And if we have this ad hoc committee, what are we asking this ad hoc committee to give this board? What, aside from just having an ad hoc, what are we looking for?
I'm not really, I was wondering about what the product of the last ad hoc committee was when they had this before under Mary Everett's presidency, and I've attended a presentation that she made afterwards at the OTAC conference about disaster preparedness, but I wasn't really clear on what the outcome of the previous work was. To me, it's hard for OT to say we own, any aspect of disaster preparedness because it's all hands on deck. But there are certain areas that we can contribute to, and maybe having a scope that creates a document that explains what we can help with as OTs might be a product of such a committee, in my view.
Richard, I'm 100%. Oh, so sorry.
Board member Popovich.
I think that's right. I don't know the previous Mary Everett outcome of that either, but I do know OT's scope in disaster preparedness. There's been a couple of those topics out at AOT and OTAC, but I think really highlighting from a CBOT perspective, what they think OT's scope and what we can contribute to that team might look like.
And that as a board, we're addressing the issue, which is a big issue.
So just going further, so Board Member Pavlovich, and thank you for that, Board Member Buckwalter. Board Member Pavlovich, I guess trying to understand when I first identified and talked about the examples of COVID-19, and I talked about our involvement in telehealth, our involvement in home health, you thought those were good topics. Do we want to be more specific then in an ad hoc that we're putting together specific to post-COVID-19? Do we, instead of it being disaster preparedness, I mean, I know it falls under this, but is our action, I heard a couple of things. The action could be to address those items. The action could be to partner with OTAC. Your thoughts? Trying to get to the action on this, that's why I'm...
Maybe the direction for this committee or ad hoc committee should be, review what OTAC has on disaster preparedness and disaster response and tailor it to California and our profession.
So we're a regulatory board, so I'm less inclined to suggest that of our ad hocs. Certainly we can invite OTAC to join our ad hoc and provide that professional language for us. I think what's before us under this topic as a board is to really, is there value in discussing, for example, when COVID-19 hit, there was certain emergency legislation that had to be passed so that the consumer had access to our services. Do we feel as a board that we clearly had some indication of what that was? Do we want an ad hoc group to be thinking about those items so that, hopefully never this comes again, but in the event there was, we live in California, there are fires, there are things, are there certain things that we want from a regulatory standpoint that if the board had to jump in and help support certain language that gave people access to occupational therapy? Another option for us is, do we want our legislative committee to look at that? We have a few options here if we don't go with an ad hoc. Your thoughts?
I don't really think that we have a good handle on OT's role. I don't know that we want to relax our regulations in the event of of a disaster, we would take the lead of the governor on that. I mean, that's what we have done in the past several years. It doesn't initiate with this board. To me, the topic is a little bit big, unless you really, really distill it down. To me, the most we should do as a board, without overstepping our role, is maybe to identify that, you know, there are certain areas in which OT expertise, you know, licensees can be helpful. We're not going to be the only ones who are helpful. In my area of California, my counterpart, David, when we had the fires in Santa Rosa, which is an area that I used to cover, and then I handed off to other therapists because we switched. He had, you know, we get people power wheelchairs and custom wheelchairs that burn in Santa Rosa, and he had to quickly try to get alternatives, either people who are quadriplegic or, you know, rely on the wheelchair for day-to-day. So they had to expedite provision of a suitable replacement custom wheelchair that may have any components to it, and people who are burned out of their homes and then they go to shelters. How do they go to the toilet in the shelter if they have a disability? Who takes care of bathing? What happens to their care? Nursing homes that are flooded or they're burned and are evacuated. Again, personal care and training staff and volunteer help. These are the areas for me that are.
If we could get a moment.
Board Member Bookwalter, I'm not sure if you're aware of this. Board Member Pavlovich, we will definitely come to you next. Could you mute, please, because it's causing an echo on our side, we're being told. Thank you. All right, please, sorry for that interruption.
That's okay. So these are possibilities, right? Or also in San Francisco, we had the big, there's the governor's volunteer effort to have people help with the vaccinations under COVID. So there are things we can do. Now, are we the only ones who can do that? Some of the language I've heard around this disaster preparedness is OTs need to promote themselves as being able to help in disasters, which I feel is a little bit pugnacious, frankly, because we're not the only ones who are doing these things.
And out of our scope, too.
And out of our scope. So I am concerned about you know, trying to carve out a territory, which is how it can kind of get to that. I would rather limit it to maybe we're looking at disaster preparedness, how we can help as a board, and these are areas of particular where we can be helpful. We're going to do it with nursing. We're going to do it with social work. You know, we're going to do it with families. And
is your mic on?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just aiming the wrong way. It's a directional mic. So I mean, I have strong feelings about it, obviously, because I'm going on and on. But you know, I think it should be contained. I really do think it should be contained. And I don't know. I'm concerned about an ad hoc committee getting more expansive. Things go to an ad hoc committee, and suddenly, you know, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, and it gets to be like a big project. We have other things that I do think we should do that with. You know, some of the practice issues that have been on hold for a long time, and some of the other issues that we have, I think are a little bit, to me, more
direct.
Yeah, more directly relevant to our role.
Okay. So we have a comment from Board Member Pavlovich, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, if I may just posit an alternative scenario. There's a beautiful position statement by WFOT, WFOT, on occupational therapy and disaster preparedness. I actually do think it's a consumer protection issue. And we've done studies, even in academia, there's a lot of studies going on a post-pandemic, I mean, that hasn't even been confirmed, but access to services and occupational therapy and people that lost all that because they lost their jobs and they couldn't afford to send their children places or get therapy or those kinds of things. But it's a 2-page position statement from, again, WFOT, the World Federation of Occupational Therapy. And it outlines distinctly what occupational therapy should be doing. And a lot of it is under advocacy, equity, and consumer protection. And there's a whole, I could read it to you, but you know, I'd rather maybe table that for another discussion. But it says, you know, ensuring accessible environments, including people with disabilities, you know, access. And so although we think of it, I don't want to put it in an umbrella of it's too big. I actually think it's something we could be addressing from a consumer protection, especially looking at the levels of population of people that lost access to services. And there is no way to get that back in this post-pandemic world in terms of insurance, people losing jobs. I mean, this is just, it falls under cultural awareness, you know, equitable access to services, and that we're still struggling in that area. So whenever there's an issue that requires people lack of access to OT services, and they're finding those somewhere else, I do believe it falls under the purview of the board to kind of address that. So.
Thank you for those comments. So let me ask the board this. What do you think about hearing those comments? What do you think if item 12 is tabled? Because the ad hoc is really the outgrowth. I think what I've heard in all of our discussion today, which again, thank you for all of your input, but what I've really heard is this board wants to define what disaster preparedness means in terms of our role. And perhaps if we table it and we get that language from WFIT, we can define it and then therefore decide if it stays with us or if we put an ad hoc together. That will also allow us time to partner with our professional association and see how they want to be involved. Because as we know, we're involved from consumer protection, and our focus is how to regulate and do that, and they're very focused on the scope and the practice. So there could be something that we do together. Maybe they take the lead, maybe we do it, who knows? But we're not, I'm not hearing that we're at the ad hoc point yet. I'm hearing that the future agenda, we table it now, and the future agenda item is to define what our role is, and the direction to staff is to gather more information like this WFIT item that Sharon, our board member Pavlovich, brought up. What do you think?
I support that very much, and maybe getting, so if AOTA has any, publications or OTAC has any publications on OT and disaster preparedness, I think that would be great to look at a future meeting. And
okay. So before, I guess we could we're going to have to go to our public anyhow. I don't think it's going to change the motion that's being made. So if we could first start with a motion and a second, then we'll go to public both in the audience and on the WebEx. Who would like to make a motion that we bring this back to our May meeting for discussion about occupational therapy's role in disaster, occupational therapy license board's role in disaster preparedness, and then direct staff specifically?
Do we need a motion?
I think we do need a motion because it's on the agenda and we're doing something different than what it's listed as. And you usually like motions, so now you're going to tell me you don't want one? Come on, man.
I think that we can touch base with the executive officer to see if she needs a motion or if she understands an assignment to get information back to the board. But of course, the board, for clarity as to what direction it would like, we can always do a motion.
So I would it would be my preference if we just did a motion. Do I understand that it can be the preference to, we have the right to make a motion, right?
Of course.
Yeah. I'm gonna do it, just in light of her not.
Maybe Sharon wants.
That would be perfect. We see that your hand is up, Board Member Pavlovich. We have one comment from Board Member Cabrera. Go ahead.
Well,
first.
I was going to make the motion, but if
Okay.
Sharon wants to make the motion,
Board Member Pavlovich, did you have some comments, or were you making a motion?
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Cabrera. I'll second you.
I'd like to make the motion that we table this to make. Here we go. I'd like to make a motion that we table this ad hoc disaster preparedness committee, ad hoc committee, till our May meeting. For now.
And that we direct board staff, we're going to direct board staff to collect items from AOTA and WFIT and OTAC on the topic and present to us.
And that we will direct our board staff to the pertinent members to
Collect all those
to
items.
collect the necessary items for this proposed ad hoc disaster preparedness committee.
Well done, Mr. Cabrera. I second. And
All right,
just for
thank you.
Executive Officer, yeah,
And
Executive Officer Martin, I will get you everything I have, which is quite extensive, so that that limits the amount of work you have to do.
Thank you, Board Member Pavlovich. Do you have any other comments before I open it up to the public? Okay. Seeing none, let's first go to our, well, let's switch it up. If we could ask the moderator to open the Q&A, see if there's any comments.
This is a moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And it looks like we do have a request for comment from Ada. Ada, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
As a fireman's daughter, I'm very passionate about disaster relief, and as a former volunteer for the Red Cross and disaster relief prior to being a healthcare worker. But in all my years as an OT practitioner, I've always been hesitant because I never really understood the impact of being a disaster volunteer on my license or malpractice or scope of practice, and especially how that impacted what I could and couldn't do in the role of an assistant. And so I'm very appreciative for this conversation today. As I consider myself to be professionally engaged and knowledgeable of the regulations. However, I have never really taken the time to try and determine the answer to my confusion to participate in disaster preparedness. And if I'm as engaged as I am, perhaps those who are less engaged could, they hesitate to engage in disaster preparedness activities. So just as a thought that maybe there are others who don't participate in disaster preparedness because of not understanding those kinds of comments. So I've always wondered, how do I really fit in to disaster preparedness, although I know I have plenty of skills to offer. I look forward to the May meeting to hear additional discussion by the board. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ada Boone Harrell, and it's too bad that you can't be in 4 places at once, because we would love your input on that committee as well. But you can always do written comments or talk to whoever, if we go in that direction, ends up on that committee, or even talk to one of your colleagues and make sure that they know all your comments, because you are a wealth of knowledge in so many areas. Okay, thank you for that comment. Anybody else? Okay.
I have one more comment. Ada, what you said reminded me of the governor's registration program, where people would sign up online to be volunteers during the COVID-19 emergency. And I remember signing up for that. I went online. I said, I'm going to sign up for this, and we get back the message saying doctors and nurses are required at this time. They had categories that you select your category, and occupational therapy was not a category, but so there was another, so I put other, and I ended up never volunteering. But there's that sort of, so I appreciate what you said about not knowing what was our scope.
Any comments from our audience or public here? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion from Board Member Cabrera. We have a second from Board Member Pavlovich, and if we could please take the vote on that.
Board Member Bookwalker?
Aye.
Board Member Cabrera?
Aye.
Board Member Pavlovich?
Aye.
Vice President Marcos?
Aye.
Secretary Doe? Aye. And President Miller?
Yes.
Motion carries.
So here's where we're at. I just want to point out a couple of things. We're at 12:26. We do have to have lunch. We do have a speaker coming at 2, so we have a hard stop. The plan was originally to stop at 12:30, to be back here by 1:50 with a hard start right at 2 o'clock. We also have students from Stanbridge University joining us to listen to this. The talk is on the compact. It's item, let me get there. It is item 17. The presentation is not by Chuck Wilmarth, but it is the person who is actually on the compact. She's an occupational therapist, and I'll have all that. But here's what's before us. Items 13 and 14 look like they need a little bit more of our discussion. Based on what happens today, I would like to pause now for lunch. Here's my suggestion. We pause for lunch. We come back. We know we have a hard start at 2, which is when we'd start. I think we should all try to get back just a little bit before because it's a hard start. She's on the East Coast, and we want to be respectful of how late it is there. If we have time, we can bring 13 and 14 back. If we don't have time today, we have plenty of time on the agenda tomorrow to do that as well. Is the board okay with that sort of pathway? We can figure out 13 and 14 after lunch. You can weigh in then, but are you okay? We're going to break now.
So, question, so 13 and 16 are the same, yeah? Can we discuss at the same time? Because it's the same document we're looking at.
Yes,
So I am fine with.
There is no 16 really, if you want to know the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we're
fine breaking now and then bringing this back if we have time today, if not tomorrow.
Okay. And for our public members who joined in to hear that, we do recognize your time is valuable. We hope you'll come back for those topics. But we have a couple of things. We are going to break now for lunch. When we come back, we're talking about the compact. We also have a university joining us. And then and then when we close for the day, we're going into closed session. So that's what's before us. But I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn, 12:28 for lunch, with us coming back at 1:55 p.m. Okay? Thank you. Thank you to everybody for your participation. Welcome, everyone, to the Board of Occupational Therapy. We are coming to you from the Department of Consumer Affairs. We're very excited that we have a number of options by which for you are able to join us in this meeting and to join in the discussion for our public. You can either join us live and come in and be in the audience, or you can join us by WebEx. With that said, Secretary Doe, could you please take roll?
Yes. Board Member Bookwalter?
Here.
Board Member Cabrera?
Present.
Board Member Palovich?
Present.
Vice President Marcos?
Here.
Secretary Doe here, and President Miller.
Here. Thank you. We have a quorum. Okay, so here's what's before us. We have a speaker with us. I'm going to announce that speaker, who will be, and that is item 17, who's going to talk to us about the license compact. Our speaker has so generously given their time, and they're on the East Coast. So if there's no objections, I'm going to ask that we go to item 17 and request that we put items 13, 14, and 16 on the agenda tomorrow. Item 13 being about PDUs, 14 is about supervision, 15 is about supervision of the OTA, so one's about the OT, one's about the OTA. And item 16 is a verbal update on scheduling another committee. So we have a couple of items, but if there's no objection to either of that, then we're going to move forward on those items. Also keeping in mind that we will be going back to agenda item 8 tomorrow, where we will be reviewing and voting on approval of the teleconference board meetings. You as the board have now been provided all the meeting minutes, all pages, so that's what's before us, aside from the other items on the agenda and what we have to do in closed session. Everybody okay with that? Moving forward? Okay, then with that, I would like to move to, well, actually what I'd like to do, let's see how many participants we have on. Would anyone in our public like to reintroduce themselves coming back from the break?
Hi, I'm Carlin Daly-Rayom, Government Affairs Co-Chair with OTAC and also Clinical Faculty at University of the Pacific. Happy to be here.
Thank you for joining us, Carlin. All right, and with that, we also have students from the first cohort at the Riverside campus for the University of Stanbridge, or Stanbridge University. We have their instructor with us. It's a leadership course, Dr. Bill Wong. Bill, would you like to unmute yourself? Say anything, and any of you students, I know you well as well. If any of you who would also like to say anything, please do before we start.
Hello, everyone. So this is Bill Wong. I am the co-instructor with Ms. Miller for the Riverside class for Stanbridge University, and they're observing today's session as part of the leadership course. Thank you.
Welcome to all of you. That is a leadership management and advocacy course. And so this topic, Dr. Leslie Wilson-James, has been one that we're all interested in. And so we have this class joining us. Before we have the moderator close the Q&A, is there anyone else on the WebEx that would like to introduce themselves?
This is the moderator. Looks like I have a couple individuals who would like to introduce themselves. I have Chuck Wilmarth, and Chuck, if you could please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
I'm Vice President of Health Policy and State Affairs with the American Occupational Therapy Association. I've joined today's meeting to listen to the presentation by Chair James and be available to answer any questions related to the licensure compact from AOTA's perspective. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Chuck.
And then I also have Bryant Edwards. And then Bryant, if you can please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
For unmuting me. This is Bryant Edwards. I'm the president for the OT Association of California. So happy 2023, everybody, and thanks for allowing me to say hello.
Welcome, Bryant. Always a pleasure to have you. Just as a side note, Bryant was my student in a hand therapy clinic. He's an exceptional clinician and leader, so welcome.
And then this is the moderator. I also have a request from Ada. And Ada, if you could please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Ada Boone-Hurl, COTA and Program Director of the Sacramento City College OT Assistant Program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ada. Always a pleasure. Appreciate all your input.
All right, and this is a moderator. Appears that was our last request to introduce themselves. Would you like me to close that Q&A?
Yes, thank you. So for agenda item 17, I would like to go ahead and thank and welcome a presentation by Dr. Leslie Wilson-James, an occupational therapist, who is chair of the Executive Committee of the Occupational Therapy Licensure Compact, with updates on the compact. Dr. Leslie Wilson-James, it's all to you. We turn it to you.
Oh, good afternoon. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Well, I'm Dr. Leslie Wilson James. I am an occupational therapist, have been practicing for almost 30 years, and I am in South Carolina. I've been the chair of the South Carolina Board of Occupational Therapy for many years, and came on as we enacted the legislation in our state, came on to the Board of Commissioners with the OT Compact. So I am super, super duper excited about the compact and about the things that the compact has to offer for the profession overall, and particularly in our state, which is a rural state. And we really, there is a huge demand for our profession and to continue to show our distinct value. And so to be able to have our presence even more within our state is exciting to me personally. I hear a lot of students are here, and I'm excited about that because I'm a faculty member at Lenore Ryan University in a master's level OT program, and my leadership students also attend board meetings and write advocacy letters. So really glad to have students being able to see this side of occupational therapy, getting a glimpse at this other side. So without further delay, I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's see how well that'll work. I am going to hit the share button here and let's see what happens. Yep, it happened. I definitely want to thank the California Board of
I
Occupational.
apologize, Dr. James. I think you have two monitors, so you're gonna have to switch your display settings because we're seeing the presenter side.
Okay.
So up at the top where it says display settings, I believe there should be an option to swap presenter view and slideshow. There we go. Okay, you're all good.
Okay, I hope this is the right one then. Okay, so thank you for taking the opportunity to learn more about the OT Compact. I know you've had lots of discussions through the months and through the last year or so about it, and I really commend you on having those discussions and going through the thoughtfulness about the compact. That is something that our state actually did as well, and many states as well. So today, this is me, and I have Chuck Wilmar's name on here as well, who is here to provide great support of me and of you. As you all know, the compact is a joint effort that was established by AOTA and NBCOT. So what that means is these two organizations came together and said, hey, you know, we feel like this is a great effort, and their role has been facilitating the process, and their role has also been greatly funding the process up until this point, and they will continue. So the bottom line is that in an OT compact, that there is a way for standards of practice to be met, to be acceptable, for us to expand the services for within our state and within those pockets or gaps of areas that we all have in our state. Even though California, I know, is a huge state, I can assume that you have gaps as well. And I actually heard you speaking about them on your last board meeting that I was really interested in listening to. Supports military families. That is very important to us as a state and as a compact to make sure that our military families can seamlessly practice across lines as necessary. Telehealth, as we all know, during COVID, telehealth really started to balloon even more within our profession. And so this compact allows for greater latitude in telehealth as well. And then there's a lot of cooperation that will come out of this out of member states in all the areas of licensure and regulation, because there's a lot to learn from one another. And overall, there's a high degree of consumer protection that will now be even more affirmed across state lines with the compact. So how it works, Again, I know this is probably a little bit of a review for you all, for some, but for students, this may be a new piece for you to take in your hats. And that is that the OT Compact is not an automatic feature with your state license. It is a privilege, and it is an endorsement that you can obtain on your license. It is a mutual recognition model between the member states. If you are a member, then you are mutually recognized in member states. And so there is, you have a valid compact license, is unrestricted of other member states. And so that license then allows you, with that privilege, to practice in those states who are members of that compact. And it's very important. We all know that our license is a privilege to be an occupational therapist and to carry that privilege. So the compact is an added, enhanced privilege to a license for licensees in those home states who wish to obtain that privilege. So there are lots of benefits to practitioners. With practitioners, you can continue to have those CE requirements in your home states. There are practitioners now who have state licenses in multiple states. And in those states, the continuing education requirements often are different. And so with the compact, you will abide by whatever your state's continuing education requirements are. That's what will apply to you as a licensee within that privilege. And you will renew the privilege at the same time that you will renew your state licensing. So that's, I think, a really big piece to think about with the continuing education requirements that are so varied across states when you have multiple licenses. This really streamlines the process. There's also the benefit of a continuation of care for clients who travel out of state, or if you're member states that they're traveling in, then that's telehealth that could occur with that client in another state. And there's a good continuation of services. Again, the military spouses, military personnel, there is a great benefit there, and economic opportunities for practitioners in this compact. So how do you access this great privilege? You have to have a license in your home state. And after that is in place, then again, there's an addition to, if you're a member state, then you can obtain this. There's a background check involved here, so that we make sure that there's great protection of the public across state lines. And there are OTs and OTAs both can obtain this privilege. And if there are any jurisprudence requirements of member states where you're seeking the privilege at, then you would have to take care of those privileges in your home states. Practitioners must adhere to all the laws and regulations that are in the compact. That's very important. So how does this all happen? This is a schematic of how we feel that this is going to play out, because we know we're all kind of talking a little intangible, but this is the plan, that you get the privilege, and then after you get the privilege, you would see those requirements, then you would purchase it, and you would have the privilege. And we're estimating that this whole process would take about 10 minutes to do. And that's based on the physical therapy model. And so we're expecting ours to be very aligned with about that 10-minute time span. To license your boards, it's important to know that you will retain the control over the scope of practice within your state. And that's very important to licensure board members. As being a member and the chair of my board for many years, that's very important, because that is sometimes very unique to your state. Retaining control over individual licensure process. Your process does not change unless you change it. The compact privilege kind of aligns itself with that. And you can receive access to the centralized compact data system. The idea is to have a two-way system where you can go in and look at information of who has a privilege within your state, look at various information about the have access to that OT Compact database, and also receive support from other member states. Every board or every state that's a member will need to appoint a commissioner. And a commissioner is a representative for your state in the OT Compact. So there's a board of commissioners on our website. All the names are listed for all the 22 states who are currently members. And there is a fee. There will be a charge fee for the compact privilege, and that much of that is still being ironed out exactly of what that fee will be, but we're expecting it to be nominal. So the operations. So how does this commission and OT Compact operate? And that's we operate by that board of commissioners. So every state elects a commissioner. Every state has a voice in this process and in the operations by those members who are a part of the commission. And so within the commission, there are several committees, and I'll go over those shortly. But this commission, which all member states have a representative, is responsible for the implementing and administering of the provisions related to this OT Compact. And the commissioners are appointed by your board, your agencies, your member states. So you determine who you want to represent you. And in most states, what we've seen is that that person has been either the board chair, the board administrator, a board member, but that has been the person who will be the liaison on the OT Compact Board of Commissioners for your state. I will say here that in our state, we were really working, the association was working very diligently to bring this legislation forward, and they were in very close communication with the board, licensure board, about this process. And when the process happened, the one thing that we did not, I think we're not as proactive about, was thinking about who that commissioner was going to be for our state. Who is that person? Because that, again, is a piece of legislative board business that you would need to vote on who that person is. So I think as a board member and a chair, I would say, if you are thinking, when you are thinking about joining the compact, also be thinking about who that person is and the process of voting amongst your members on that person to represent you. So the OT Compact Commission is going to create and manage a data system. And I know everybody's heard a lot about this data system. The world is so digital, and this is a great opportunity to connect all the states through this data system and allow states to communicate and exchange licensure information and exchange disciplinary information as well. So the data system, we are expecting to have these features. So what's going on now? Where are we at? So I know you've heard much of that presentation as a board before, but let me tell you about what we've been doing in the last almost 12, well, it haven't been 12 months yet, but what we've been accomplishing. So at this point, there are 22 states who have enacted the OT Compact. So that means that there are 22 commissioners on the OT Compact Board of Commissioners. And so this OT Compact Commission is established, and they have been operating very due diligently. So again, everybody has a representative. The first commission meeting convened August 2022, and the process began drafting policies, discussing about the compact itself, looking at data systems. So there's been a lot of behind the scenes work that this Board of Commissioners have been doing, and particularly the the Executive Committee, has been working. The OT Compact website is continuing to be updated. There is a tab on this website, so you can go and look at the commission and find out when the meeting dates are, see all of the meeting minutes. Really, everything is we're trying really hard to be transparent so that you know what's going on. Even on this site, there's a place where you can submit questions and get feedback. So that website is really the go-to. I would say if you have not visited it, please take a moment to go to that OT Compact website. There's a lot of information, and with the work with CSG and NBCOT and AOTA, they have been very good at helping us to support us to keep that website updated and making sure that information is accessible. So, let me go back. Training and technical assistance for the state boards have been occurring. Events like today are continuing to go on for boards who want to know more, organizations who want to know more about the OT Compact. So all in all, we're estimating that 12 to 14 months is what it would take to begin issuing a privilege. And I think I covered everything that was here. So the next steps, we definitely had the meeting. The executive committee was elected. And again, that executive committee is the smaller committee that is charged with really being the arm of the execcom to do oversight and to really bring information back to the full commission to make some determinations on. So that committee is consisted of 9 people, and that is the committee that I am the chair, have been elected as the chair by my peers of the 22 states that are about members. So within this first meeting, we began to form committees. And so the committees are up and operational now. And again, I'll talk about those. We adopted commission bylaws. We adopted the rule on rulemaking. It was it was a first meeting, and I will tell you, it was very efficiently run. And I think we were very productive during that first meeting because this group really wants to hit the ground running, and they really are interested in doing the work to make sure that we are protecting the public as well as being able to offer our practice more due diligently across state lines. So we started in August 2022, and there's an expectation of early 2024 where the compact privileges will be issued, begin to issue. So these are the current states that are a part of the OT Compact Board of Commissioners. And as you see, South Carolina is there. There were some early adopters in 21 and 22, and so 23 is still young. So we'll see who will join this effort in 2023. This is our map, and this map can be found on our website. And the dark blue area shows the legislations that has been enacted. So those are the 22 states. They have enacted the legislation. The process is that they are now within this compact, and they are now at the table making active decisions about how this compact will develop, how it will run, and really doing the dig your heels in kind of work. And there is a light green, and the light green states have legislation that's pending, and Chuck can talk more about that if you have questions. And then the gray states are the states where legislation has not quite been introduced. But I do know that lots of states have reached out. Lots of states are like California. They want to know more. They want to be very thoughtful about their decision. I should say every state is being very thoughtful about those decisions. And so think forums like today, and there's also going to be an opportunity at AOTA to learn more about the compact and where we are and what's going on. are always welcome so that information can be given to those boards and states. So as I mentioned, there are committees. So these are the 6 committees that are up and running, and I will say that everybody has had a meeting or they have they're working on something. This is again a very high energy group, and very excited about trying to be a part of history for our profession and doing it in a sense that the distinct value of occupational therapy is provided, and that the consumers and the stakeholders of our profession are well protected with this throughout this process. So the rules committee, they are responsible for developing those rules that come from the bylaws amendments, any policy considerations, anything that's making sure things are concurrent with the states, and they're reviewing existing rules and making recommended changes to the body of the Board of Commissioners, the whole 22. Compliance committee. The compliance committee is a standing committee as well, and it makes sure that the commission is in compliance with everything in the bylaws and that its rules have been authorized correctly. The finance committee, again, it says these are the standing committees, and it's really looking at financial oversight and making sure that the commission is going to operate within the budget that we have. They're also steadily looking for financial resources to find out how we can achieve our purpose. I think was a question about the database and what kind of resources are available. The Finance Committee is working on this. They are looking into avenues that we can use to have financial sustainability. As I mentioned, AOTA and NBCOT have put forth funds and a commitment to ongoing funds to get this up and running. But the Finance Committee is, again, looking at the budget, looking at what is going to be needed. So that group is working very hard. There's also the Training and Public Relations Committee. This committee has been meeting, coming up with uniform messaging, coming up with things like you want today, information about where we are right now, what have our achievements been, information about press releases, coming up with a marketing plan of how to help inform the public and practitioners about our OT Compact. So that committee, again, is working really hard. The Nominations and Elections Committee, that committee is to inform commissioners of their responsibility related to their position and their role. It's to hold the election process, to kind of facilitate that. So they have not been as active, but the other ones have definitely been active and will continue to be more active in the days and the weeks to come. So the things that we have been really, really working on is hiring the secretariat is number one on the list here. That secretariat is, and it took me a minute to think about what is the secretariat? The secretariat role really is like your board administrator. In my state, we have an agency called Labor Licensing and Regulation, like your agency that governs our board or does all of the administrative work for the board, let me say that. And so the secretariat would be doing the same types of things as your agency does for your board, really kind of being that that space where funds go in and out, being that management of meetings, arm, being that more that administrative location. And then the executive director would work in concert with the secretariat and the Board of Commissioners, just much as Heather works with you all, more in a role related to that function. The executive director will essentially be the face of the OT Commission as things go on. The database is the, so once we felt like as an executive committee that once we got the secretariat in place and the executive director in place, more things could happen because we need a day-to-day person. You all understand that as a board. I'm sure you meet quarterly or a couple times a year, but it's really the boots on the ground, that secretariat and the executive director who are there doing the day-to-day. And so that was the primary thing, is to get that person in place. The database was the second, I would say it's the second, but not in any real sequence, because we really started talking about a database from day one and looking at what options are out there. And commission rules, day one, looking at what those rules should be and how to kind of craft some of those. And the commission's budget. Those are the primary objectives over the next 12 to 14 months that we are on the ground running with. And again, I won't say any real order, but I know that the secretariat, we really want to get that in place. An executive director. So in the meantime, what you need to know is that website is a wealth of information. As soon as we have a meeting, as soon as any press releases go out, CSG has been really wonderful with making sure those things are updated on the website. So I encourage you highly to visit that website, not just today, but ongoingly. And there is an FAQ that we've had, and we've developed that. It's a living document that we've been developing over time. As we get questions, we've been trying to, again, adjust it as well. So, and that is also on the website for you. And the last thing is you can submit questions to the OT Compact through the website, and those questions are fielded and responded to in a timely manner. Again, CSG has been helping us with that, and that has been a process that's been working very well. So now is the time for questions. These are some of the key players who've been helping and helping us to make this all possible. So you have these contacts that you can definitely reach out to. I just would add, again, I just commend you for taking the opportunity to know more, learn more, and really looking at the compact in high consideration for your state, because it definitely offers a lot of latitude for our profession. And when you think about all of the various types of clients that we serve, and then the various types of academic needs that are there, having that compact license has a lot of benefits. All right. Any questions for me?
Moderator, if you could please go ahead and open the Q&A. We'll start with questions from our public.
All right. This is a moderator at the direction of the board. I've opened up the Q&A feature for the public. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, looks like we have a request from Bryant Edwards. And Bryant, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak in a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Hi, thanks. Thanks so much for the presentation. And here in California, our association received a very similar presentation with all of this great content from Chuck and team just a couple months ago. This is just more of a comment for the board, and that I appreciate that you've invited this conversation and this dialogue. Obviously, we know nothing is at the forefront here in California yet, but I appreciate the proactiveness of it, and really encourage the board to think about how this might play out in the state, and how we can set, I think, both the licensees in California up for success, so that they can be a part of this and provide services outside the state. But I think more importantly, how we can set up those outside of the state coming into California to be successful here in the state. Just knowing, some of the other agenda items that we have on today's or for today's and tomorrow's board meeting related to professional development and areas of focus, and ethical practice. And so I look forward to further discussions. And I know that we have to ride a delicate balance between OTAC and CBOC, but I think we're all here to ensure that our practitioners are able to practice at the peak of their license, and also make sure that our consumers are getting high quality services. So that is my comment, and I look forward to continuing the dialogue and seeing how this plays out for California.
Thank you, Bryant. And again, we will continue with public comment, but just to level set for people who are new to hearing this conversation, specifically our students, this board functions under the Department of Consumer Affairs. There's not a board in the state of California that has accepted this compact language yet, although there might be some who are having different discussions. But just wanted to let you know so that you understand that this board can deliberate on it, but we also function under the Department of Consumer Affairs. Are there further, moderator, are there more public comments? And by public comments, I was trying to help the speaker ask for questions and such, and so I wanted to start there.
This is the moderator. Appears there are no requests currently. If you'd like, I can keep it open a little bit longer.
So, it's okay if you close it, but I am going to come back to you after the board has discussion. I just wanted to make sure that we've answered questions from our public. But now if we could go back and bring this back to the board for discussion. Are there any comments? Board Member Popovich.
Dr. James, thank you so much for being here and presenting. Really appreciate it. Question, just from your own experience, I'm curious to know if you had to rate like the top two kind of areas that were kind of aha moments as you were learning in this process of, becoming part of the compact, and if you can give advice to a future, as California is trying to figure out what this looks like, just, I don't know, maybe a heads up and maybe the top 2 or 3 things that you had were little aha moments. It probably would help just a little bit. Does that make sense?
You're breaking up a little bit, so is the top 2.
Any like aha moments that you had? Anything in this process of becoming part of the compact where you look at hindsight and say, oh, okay, that makes sense now? Just because we're still trying to make sense of it all and what that looks like in California.
Okay, yeah, sure, Sharon. I think the aha moment of just the organizational structure of the compact and how AOTA and NBCOT and CSG are supporting us and facilitating our organization. So that was like an aha moment that, wow, we will be our own entity, and they are actively working together with CSG to make this, to help this to happen. I think another aha moment that I had was just to see the states and everybody as an OT profession being very interested in not knowing all the answers, but willing to sit at the table and figure it out and do the work to see how this can help the people who we serve and get our service out there. Other aha moment was, like I said, that first one was that organizational structure and really seeing the role of the secretariat and the role of the executive director and just having a better understanding of that was key for me. Let's see, another aha moment. Aha moment was with I guess the database. Just thinking about how that would work and the things that need to happen to get all of that in place. That was a aha moment. Like, yeah, we can do this. We can do this. So I hope that helps.
That helps a lot. Thank you so much, Dr. James. I appreciate it.
Dr. James, this is Denise. I have a couple questions for you. For those states that you have stood this up in, is the language, the regulatory language, all the same for the most part? And who works with you on that?
Well, I can speak to our state and then Chuck can jump in here. But with our state, the state association worked with AOTA, and the AOTA really facilitated that process with them. And then our state association also had a lobbyist who they worked with. And so they pretty much took care of that legislative arm of things. Now, as a board, there was a moment where, as a chair, I was asked to be at one of the hearings and really speak to the board's support or feeling about the compact. But most everything was managed through the association. So Chuck, I'm not sure about wording in other states.
Dr. James, we'll come back to public comment and open that up for Chuck in just a moment, should he like to speak. Does any other state do fingerprinting?
Yes, there are states who do fingerprinting.
That are in the compact?
Again, that maybe I will let Chuck.
We'll let Chuck answer that too, if that's helpful.
That is.
Okay. And then how close is Texas? And let me know if that's a Chuck question as well.
That's a Chuck question.
Okay. Are there questions? Thank you for your patience with me. I'll withhold and we'll go back on public and we'll ask Chuck. But are there other board comments for Dr. James?
Yeah. Hi, Dr. James. I'm Richard Bookwalter on the board, and I just want to thank you for coming to us and to presenting. There's a lot that's happened since the beginning days of this compact, and it's fantastic that it's getting off the ground. And I'm so glad to hear about all the progress you've made. I am, and I'm interested in the process that you mentioned, and maybe again that Chuck Wilmarth can elaborate on with AOTA, the process of the associations working on the initial legislation and the boards kind of coming in after as to provide input for the legislature and develop regulations after the legislature, sort of as the legislature's deciding to adopt the compact. I think that's the process that is being followed in all the states, but I'm not sure. So I just wanted to hear about that. I mean, as far as this board driving anything, of course, want to be responsive to changes in the law.
Yeah, Richard, Chuck can also speak on this, but I can just speak to our state. And yes, the association definitely, again, drove this, and it played out just as you described in our state. Now, every state is structured a little differently, but we definitely had to go before it definitely went before the legislature, and then the board, as you said, worked to craft things that needed to be crafted. But it was a, I would say with our state, and this may not be so with all states, but I really think we have a great working relationship with our association. And so I think that helped as well.
So with the comments that have all come up, because we have a lineup of responses from Chuck Wilmarth, how does, is the board okay if we go back to public comments? And then we can come back again, should you have comments, but Board Member Cabrera, do you have any comments, or I'm going to take it back to public? Okay. No? All right. So moderator, would you please open the Q&A and
Sure. This is the moderator. I'm also going to go ahead and promote Chuck up to a panelist. That way he can freely unmute and mute himself.
There we go. And
hi, Chuck.
Hi.
You've been promoted to a panelist.
Outstanding. Well, thank you for that promotion, and I'm happy to join the group and try to answer some of your questions. And there's a lot of questions in there. One goes to the process, and certainly AOTA and the state associations are working together with state lobbyists to get the compact language introduced and signed into law. I would say before all of that, as the compact language was being drafted, there was extensive outreach to the state regulatory board community. There were opportunities to call in and provide comments. We had state regulatory folks on the advisory group. So we like to think that we had some input from the regulators on the front end. And then as we've gone into states, working with state associations again to get the language introduced, we've reached out to the state regulatory boards and agencies and had a dialogue about, what this is, what the impact is, answering questions. And I don't think we've been in any situation where we've introduced legislation and the board was opposed or had serious reservations. So I think in all of the states we've had consensus, or at least, folks were neutral as we've gone into this. So I guess my point is, if in California, the Board of Occupational Therapy is opposed to this, then I don't think that the association would try to force anything. And if there are concerns, we'd certainly want to address them. In terms of regulations, that's an interesting topic. The Occupational Therapy Compact Commission is an interstate agency with rulemaking authority. And so as of right now, they've adopted some basic rules and bylaws. But when it comes time to the implementation side, they're going to promulgate rules. The states will post the information about the rules on their website. There will be opportunity to comment. So there's a whole process there for rulemaking. What's not clear to me, and maybe this is something where Leslie and I need to loop back with CSG, is if individual state regulatory boards will need to do their own rulemaking for any purpose related to implementing the licensure compact. I'm not sure about that. But just to assure the group that any rulemaking that's done by the Compact Commission will be in the wide open. There'll be plenty of time to see what the rules are and comment. And then I'd also suggest, if California is a member of the Compact Commission, they would have a seat at the table as any of those regulations are crafted. Could I get a prompt on some of the other questions? There were a lot of them there, and I'm not sure if I hit all the points.
Sure. Chuck, this is Denise, and if I may just comment back to that. There is a question about the language. Is the language pretty much the same in every state?
Okay, right. So the language in the compact legislation is substantially the same. It's not identical. There's going to be differences in terms of style. There's going to be differences in terms of how things are numbered, but the provisions, the substance of the provisions have to be identical. A compact is a contract between states. And for the contract to stand up, each state has to have the same provisions. You can't have a state, say, for example, the compact privilege is only good for 1 year in California. That's not the way it works. Everyone is signing up to the same set of provisions.
So I have 3 more questions. 2 are pretty easy, and then we'll open it up because the board may have more questions for you. I guess, do any of the other states fingerprint?
Okay, so the answer to that is yes, that there are states that have background checks. Now, there's different types of background checks. There might be a state level background check done by the state police, but this will ultimately require an FBI fingerprint-based background check. Now, that isn't immediate. There's language in the compact statute that gives the compact commission basically the authority to say when that goes into place. There are states out there that don't have background checks for OTs, and it's going to have to be implemented over time. And maybe Leslie can comment because I don't believe South Carolina does. I will say that the OT compact is different than the PT compact. The PT compact, all new licensees have to get a background check. And for OT, it's those that want to get a compact privilege. So, in California, everyone has to go through that process, but in other states, only those that are seeking a compact privilege would have to be fingerprinted. Does that help?
Yes. So, Dr. James, did you have anything to add to that before I go back to the question Chuck referred to you? Did you want to add anything there?
Just that, as he mentioned, we're not using that process currently, but we understand that we will have time to implement whatever is needed, and we're willing to do that because we feel like that definitely would be just another added layer of protection for the public.
Mm-hmm. And then, Chuck, how close is Texas?
Okay, so legislation was introduced the last session 2 years ago. It passed one house of the legislature, and then it ran into a roadblock. The bill has been reintroduced, but I don't think anything has broken loose. There are some concerns in the Texas legislature about the impact of the compact on some job security issues. We disagree with that. I will say that there are some other compacts that are going to be introduced. I think there's a lot of pressure, especially from the Department of Defense. So it's possible that things might break loose. But the short answer to your question is we're not hopeful this legislative session.
Got it. Thank you. Do we have other board questions? I can come back if I have any more. Anybody else want to engage here?
Well, I have a question. I mean, what we should do as a board in the meantime until California becomes involved in this process. I mean, I haven't heard anything from AOTA or OTAC about attempting to get compact legislation passed in California. The timing wasn't right the last time we talked. We've had it as kind of this standing agenda item here with the desire to get updates. On the other hand, I'm mindful of your time. You have there are 50 states, and you've got a lot on your plate in getting this done. And if California's not in the process, I think maintaining a state of readiness for something that might come down the pike is important. But I think maybe all of us will be off the board by the time this gets to California. I don't know of any plans to bring this to California. So the level of effort, if you will, and attention that we can pay as a board is something that we have to consider. And obviously today we have a high level. I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on that, on the future.
You're muted, Chuck.
Oh,
there you go. There you go. Nope, you're good.
Okay, so yeah, that's a tough situation, but I think the pressure is mounting. At first it was the nurse licensure compact and then physical therapy, but soon you're going to see licensure compacts for social workers, teachers, counselors, physician associates, and others. And so from what I understand, speaking with CSG, that more compact legislation will be coming to California in 2023. And I think that those efforts will help break things loose. I don't think in the short term that it would be the best use of our resources, AOTA's resources, to get a bill introduced. There's a lot of education that has to happen, and I think some of these larger organizations can use their resources to do that education. So that's sort of part one. Part two is, I believe CSG has met with Consumer Affairs and done some education there. I believe there might be an interest in the governor's office in this topic, especially because the Department of Defense is so interested in it. So, I agree with you, Richard. It might not happen right away and might not be, at the top of the agenda because it's not going to happen very soon. But I think, some progress is going to happen soon. It's the best way I can put it.
Thanks. I was just looking at the LegInfo website for California under compact, and it's all about tribal state gaming compacts at the moment. Nothing looks like it's been introduced just yet this year.
Fair enough.
If I may, just in echoing Board Member Bookwalter's comments, I think what's really before us is that we have kept this as a placeholder item. So here's what's before this board. We know that we operate under the Department of Consumer Affairs. They've been silent on this. There's no other compact in California. Be that as it may, the words looking at a readiness process, because we know that getting something passed takes many, many years. We know that this board has been active in looking at it. I guess the next step for us in terms of the placeholder is perhaps to really lean on our professional associations, both our state through to Bryant Edwards' words, play it out, see how it plays out, set it up, and AOTA. Now, we recognize that there's other states that are well in front of us that are going that direction. We're not asking for anything more, but I guess as a board member, I am asking that for us to keep this on as a placeholder, that if our professional associations are taking the lead, we're looking for you to come to us and identify what those steps are. We can't do anything without DCA, but similar to what happened with telehealth language, which took a very, very long time and people were opposed. And as you know, we worked away and chipped away and chipped away year after year, and all of a sudden we had language that was passed, and by the time COVID hit, we were ready to go. That's kind of the same process we're looking at here. So even if we are all off the board, which we will be, it doesn't mean we haven't done due diligence for our profession for future board members. So if you really do think the pressure is it's coming this way, then I would ask, and as a board member, to lean on you from the professional side to identify where you need to go, because we can certainly look at that, but we are also under DCA. Get it? So any other comments? Bryant, are you still on the line?
This is the moderator. I do have a request for comment from a Tai Han Nguyen.
Perfect.
And then,
I'm so glad you're speaking up. Welcome, Tai.
and then if you could please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
There's downsides to be part of the OT compact. Since not all states are part of it, I was wondering what are the reasons why they choose not to be a part of it?
I could.
Chuck, okay.
Okay, yeah, I could try to take that. I don't think that, I think it's more an issue of timing. I don't think I've heard any state association folks say, we don't want to do this, this isn't good for the profession. I think it's more about timing, but also navigating, some legislative situations. In some states, there's opposition to the compacts in general. For example, there have been concerns about the nurse licensure compact, that the compact could be used to break strikes by bringing in folks quickly from other states. So the political climate, for example, in New York might not be ripe. But I think what we've seen over the past 24 months or longer because of COVID is a real situation where the country needed to bring health professionals from one state to another, and state licensure got in the way. Now, there were efforts to emergency orders to suspend licensure, but when you did that, all those consumer protections go away. With the state licensure compact, you facilitate mobility of practitioners and you keep those important consumer protections in the way. So just to summarize, I haven't heard opposition. I think it's just a matter of time. As Leslie mentioned, 22 states have enacted. We've got legislation pending in 10 states so far. We're expecting as many as 17 bills or 17 states this year. So with any luck, we'll be in a majority of the states in time. And the last thing I'll say, if you look at other professions, nurse licensure compact, physical therapy compact, the medical licensure compact, they are headed in this direction as well. And not everyone has 50 states, DC and Puerto Rico, but I think the support for the compact is building.
Thank you for your question. Thanks for the response, Chuck. Any further comments?
This is the moderator. I have a request from Bella Yang. And Bella, if you could please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
And current OT students do to support the OT compact. Thank you.
Did you hear the comment?
Yeah,
That was Bella Yang. She's from Stanford University, and she's identifying as a student that she supports the compact.
Okay, and I heard a question there too.
Yeah.
I think she asked how to support it, right?
How to support the I didn't hear.
Yeah,
Perfect.
so I would say being a member of AOTA in your state association, in California, it may not happen right away, but across the states, support for your professional associations provides the resources necessary to do the advocacy we've talked about, but also as Leslie referenced, both AOTA and NBCOT are providing the seed money necessary to stand up the compact commission until it can get going with the licensure fees. That wouldn't be possible without students like yourself supporting the professional associations. Thank you.
And I'd just like to add to that, as students, there's always opportunity to write letters to your legislator about concerns or things that you're interested in seeing in your state and in your profession. And then there is state level Hill Days, if you participate in those, and having an opportunity to get the ear of legislators or their staff, and really, again, impressing that you if you feel that that's something that you want them to support, really communicating that. So on those levels, those are some examples of some things that as students that you can do.
Thank you for calling that out, Dr. James, and also for your comments, Chuck. I will let you know that these students actually just wrote letters to their legislators, and so they're well situated to follow the suggestion, and hopefully they also see their activity and assignment in the classroom coming to real life and the importance of it. So thanks for calling that out. I couldn't have scripted that better. Thank you. I'll be sending you good wishes. All right, who else? Do we have any more, moderator? Do we have more public comments?
It looks like Tai Hyun has requested to comment again. So if you could please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Hello, I was wondering for the OT compact, the states that are part of it, will the policies be more uniform? Because I know for some states you can do something as a practitioner, whereas other states you cannot. And if it's not going to be more uniform, do you think it eventually will be?
I can take that one. Okay, so with the licensure compact, The scope of the compact is simply about licensing and the ability to practice in another state. So if you have a license in Delaware and you're going to practice in California, the scope of practice in California applies. The requirements for advanced practice related to modalities, swallowing, and hand therapy, those apply. So it doesn't bring uniformity to practice, but what it does do is bring uniformity to licensing, that if you are licensed in one state, that is your ticket to get a license in another state. That slight differences in state law for licensing, those go away, but everything else stays the same. Does that help?
Yes. But do you believe that in the future things will be more uniformed? Or
I'm hopeful. For example, AOTA has model language related to the scope of practice, and we advocate to have that sort of language put into law. We have, standards around supervision and other topics. But at the end of the day, occupational therapy is licensed by individual states, and states have the ability to decide what's best for them. So certainly we advocate for uniformity as much as we can is the answer. But the other thing that you should keep in mind is there is already great uniformity. In the OT profession, to get a license, you need to graduate from an accredited school. You need to complete your fieldwork and pass the NBCOT exam. In other professions, that's not the case. There's huge variations in state law. So you should be happy and proud that there is great uniformity. And that's one of the reasons that the licensure compact has moved so quick, is because of that uniformity with licensure requirements.
Yes, we have a comment from Board Member Bookwalter.
Thank you. Hi, I just wanted to add to Chuck, to your comments about that. There are things, because of the role of the professional association and the role of the board, because they're different. What you were saying, Chuck, is very important. If students want to see a change in the law that would create more uniformity between California and other states, students in every state could become politically active and to seek a change in the law to make those laws uniform, and practitioners in that state. The board's role is to carry out the laws, but the association will become active, develop a strong local organization, ally with other groups in the state who have common interests, and seek a change to the law through their professional associations. That is really the advocacy of the professional associations. By paying you dues, you're paying not only for to meet and to have an infrastructure, a professional association president and board meeting and all that, you're also paying for the lobbyist, if they have a lobbyist, and that they can get together and put together, make a change in the law. We're not able to do that as a board because that's not really our role. Our role is to carry out the laws. But if you really want to join the compact, if you really want to change laws in California to make them similar to laws in other states and to create uniformity across the state, then you have to partner with your professional associations, build up your organization, fund them through your memberships, become active and create liaisons with other groups with common interests, the disabled community, the military community in the case of compacts, which is a very strong advocate for the compacts because military families are often impacted by these state-to-state moves. So by becoming involved in the organizations, by paying the dues that help pay for the activities of the organization, and for becoming active on the legislative days, writing letters, the building the organization is important if that's what you want to do. And then we, as a board, or whoever's on the board when this finally gets to California, would support or not support what you're doing. That would be another group that you would want to reach out to. So I hope that explains my point of view on that.
So two of your practitioners, both Richard and I, have almost said that the same thing in terms of our process. So hopefully there'll be some collaboration. That's why I asked. Board Member Cabrera, did you have a comment? No. Okay. Are there any more public comments? Oh, come on up. Carlin Daly Rayom.
Okay, hi, Carlin Daly Rayom with the Professional Association. Just wanted to echo Bryant's comments and really thankful for this conversation today, and thank you, Chuck and Dr. James, for being here. We certainly have been hearing from our members that there's interest in participating in the compact, and we are interested in continuing to engage in the conversation. We have not thus far seen the language, the specific language that is to be included, and so that was one of the concerns given some of the recent changes that have happened with the continuing education requirements here in terms of ethics and diversity related to protecting our consumers here in the state. We just want to make sure that anybody coming in who'd be practicing in the state would be held to similar standards. So, so we're looking forward to continue to engage in the conversation in whatever way needed.
Thank you for those comments. Any further comments from either of our speakers? Well, we know that it's almost 6:15 where you are, and so we can't thank you enough for your dedication to our profession, for having this dialogue with our board, for speaking in front of the students in the leadership class at Stanford University. We appreciate collectively as an entire board your time, your expertise, your input, and we will go away as a board into our next agenda item. We'll figure out how to deliberate on it, and we know our professional partners will also figure out their role, and we'll see where this goes. To Bryant Edwards' words, we'll see how this plays out. So thank you.
Thank you.
Moderator, if you could please close the Q&A. Oh, sorry about that. All right. So that's what's before us in item 17. We've obviously, in item 18, it's for discussion by the board. I think we've done a lot of the discussion now where we would not have to take as, we would not have to go into. So for example, item 18, agenda item, is the discussion of the compact and possible action to determine if the board will initiate steps to join the compact. I guess what I want to know in the interest of our time is I think there's at least more to discuss to keep it on the agenda for May, and I'm so moved to do so, unless this board comes back. And I have some ideas that I'm going to go back to our professional association with, so I'd like to see that. That would be my part of the discussion, or if this board has any compelling reasons for taking it off, I would invite you to speak up now and we can move forward on this item. In other words, I don't have too much to discuss here because I envision it on the next agenda item.
I have concerns about I have concerns about if the board will initiate steps to join the compact, because I'm not sure, I feel like that's an overstep on the board's part. The board wouldn't initiate this. I would think that it would be the professional association that would initiate the legislation to join the compact, and that the board would play a more supportive role, as we've heard took place in other states. Because I'm not clear on the concept of that, and yeah, so that's where I am.
I think in all fairness, that could just literally be for a future agenda item. It would be discussion of the compact and possible action. There's nothing to determine because we have nothing to determine, and we really operate under DCA. But at least we're saying we're keeping it as a placeholder. We're signaling to our professional partners what they might do as such. So. And what about what about May makes it important to have it on the next meeting agenda? I mean, is it really a good use of this board's time if nothing's happening in California? If nothing's happening in California, to maintain it as a standing item for every meeting, I just question that. Yeah. So we don't have to keep it as a future agenda item. And to your point, what will determine if it's on the agenda again is some of the behind the scenes that will take place from the 13th of February until 10 days before the meeting's noticed in May. So let's say the end of April.
So if legislation is introduced, then we could put it on the agenda, but but if no legislation is introduced, then it wouldn't be important to discuss it.
I don't actually see it as just legislation. As you know, the president sets the agenda, so I think what I'm letting you know is that where I would go with this is one criteria might be legislation. Another criteria is that our professional association has a direct ask of us. And if there's some direct ask or some movement they're doing or something that is compelling compared to where this agenda item's been, then I will of course keep it on the agenda and let them come forward. If none of that happens, it would certainly go off in the interest of what you're talking about with time.
Thank you.
I just wanted to just add my thoughts to it. I believe the reason why it's kind of standstill because to go through the legislation, it takes a lot of time and effort and outreach and money and whatnot. I think if they clearly know that we're supporting it as a board to our best capacity, I think things would change. So all I'm saying with this, I think this is why nothing else is happening, and maybe I'm wrong, and OTAC, and you can let us know about your thoughts, or maybe hopefully somebody's going to start doing something based on these conversations. But I agree, if nothing changes between now and May, I don't think it should be on the agenda, maybe until it's August. But if things change, then we definitely want to have it on the agenda, as per my opinion.
Yeah, come on up. Do we have any other board member comments? We have a comment from our public. And that would be Carlin Daly Rayom.
Hello again. So yes, this is a very helpful conversation. We, on behalf of the Professional Association, we certainly want to work closely, and I do think knowing just the conversation thus far today, I think is helpful in informing direction, and we would welcome any specific tasks or anything that would be helpful for future conversation, whether that be May or further on down the road. But we definitely want to move things forward and provide as much support around this initiative as we can.
Sounds good.
Can I just say, based on what Richard was talking about, that it's going to be OTAC and AOTA who will have to start the legislation process. Until then, we can't do anything about it. Mm-hmm. So that's why my question was, is that in the making or talking about it? I know you guys are supporting the idea, but are OTAC ready to do anything about it? Basically, that's my question.
Thus far, there has not been any legislative movement on our end, or it has not, given the history of compacts in the state, hasn't been, and all of the factors combined, it has not been the top priority. We have several other initiatives that have been higher on the list, but we are open to shifting priorities around based on member support, interest, and all of the factors that are involved in this decision moving forward.
If I may, just as a follow-up to that, but your leadership recently had a meeting with leaders of the National Association regarding the licensure compact.
Yes, we did. The Professional Association welcomed Chuck and all of the people involved in the compact to present. This was in December, to gather more information to begin kind of trying to figure out direction. So this is one of the items that has been on our agenda for the last many months. Well.
So you've heard, if you could please, I guess our ask of is you've heard multiple comments from many different board members here. So when you go back to the Professional Association, you know that we're so moved to keep it as a placeholder on the agenda, but we're going to discuss it at the length that we have when there's some movement that's either legislative, that there's either some committees that you have going that are working on language that you want to float by the board, real tactical things that we as a board can do from a regulatory standpoint. And I'll certainly be reaching out to your president. He'll be reaching out. We'll have that conversation so that we can satisfy the board's will as well in terms of it being, whether it's on a future agenda or not.
Yes, okay? That sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you all very much.
Any other discussion for agenda item 18? Are y'all comfortable where we're going? Okay. Then hearing none, we're going to finish up with number 19. I would like to queue up agenda 19 with selection of locations for board meetings to be held in May 2023, August 2023, and November 2023. I wanted to queue this up and just tell you what's in the language for those of you who are new board members so you understand what's before us. It's actually, the locations are actually called out in our language in terms of where we must hold meetings, which is Sacramento, San Francisco, and or adjacent Los Angeles. As you know, last November we were at Pima Institute, which was just a fantastic location for us. And at the time that our staff was doing some exploratory work on the San Diego area, we know that our partners at the University of St. Augustine in San Marcos have put forth a desire to hold our May location. If that's San Diego being in May, then possibly what this board might consider is San Francisco in August and Los Angeles in November. So that gives us Sacramento, which is written in the legislation, north. Then we go south. We align with our partners who are very interested at the University of St. Augustine. Then we go north again, San Francisco and or adjacent. We've been to Oakland, and then we come south again. And that, wondering if that aligns with what the board thinks or if you want to go in a different direction.
I'm fine with that. The only problem with August in San Francisco is it's peak tourist season, where the hotel costs may be at their highest. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to get, one of the obstacles always in the San Francisco area is getting hotels. So I don't know if it's November is better for San Francisco or August in terms of that, because that's always a factor. So I would leave it up to the board to decide. I'll go anywhere for these
That's
meetings.
what we're doing. We're deciding. So
But we can't. But the cost is a factor that we're not able to decide because we don't have that information.
No, we actually have come up with locations before. Certainly anything can change, and by May we could revisit it again. I think my understanding is what board staff's looking for us is they'd like us to identify locations. We can certainly take that into consideration by all means, but at least give them some direction so they can go out and book for the rest of the year. Is that my understanding? Okay. And then the only thing that I would just say to you, help me out with my LA counterparts, including Sharon Pavlovich. Have you been to LA in August? It's like 100 and... Okay, Board Member Pavlovich has her hand up.
Thank you, President Miller. Just to remind, I always remind us of this, but our promise to our constituents that we're going to be mindful of keeping costs down. So if one of them has to be virtual, or maybe there's an option, for us to kind of play around with that, just because, being held accountable for how we spend our money and travel and stuff like that. So just positing that idea, in case one has to be virtual, that's still an option if and so we need it.
Thank you. So the comment is about what are your thoughts? Other board members, what are your thoughts?
That's an interesting question, because now that the emergency, are we allowed during the COVID-19 emergency? We didn't have we didn't follow the law in having a San Francisco, LA, and a Sacramento meeting because everything was remote, and that was allowed by law. But those have expired, so we now have to return. Do we now have to return to San Francisco, LA, and Sacramento according to our earlier statutes?
So as of right now, the waiver for in-person meetings is completely waived through either June 31st June 30th, there's no such thing as June 31st, or July 31st. But either way, at that point, theoretically, we're supposed to go back to Bagley-Keene. Bagley-Keene requires one meeting in the north and one meeting in the south, and of course, this would count as a north. Your particular practice act has some specifications, but as to if any of those have been accounted for, maybe kind of up for interpretation, and we'll all figure this out. And there are several movements in the works to try and at least allow for a virtual option, and to kind of eliminate some of those requirements for travel, et cetera, due to cost savings, et cetera. But nothing's permanent yet. That's all we have.
So one of the things that we could, and again, there's tactical things that we do that help out board staff, and then there's always opportunity for things to change. So for example, we know the reason the regulatory language was brought up is because that is what it is. We recognize we've been in a pandemic. We recognize there's virtual. How about this? What if from a board staff perspective, so they can go out and identify locations and costs and that, what if we come up with some possible locations or get to consensus? What if we, let's say that August, there's nothing available in San Francisco and the virtual option's still available to us. We could consider that. You know, we would address that. I mean, just as a tactical question, Ms. Caseta, do you think you would know by the May meeting what the costs are if we, at each of these locations, do you think you'd have some idea if we're way out of? Or if you're going to have a contract process for which we just which becomes
very okay, so let me start over. So the biggest factor would be whether or not it's going to be a contracted hotel or a meeting location that would be with a partner, like St. Augustine. When we've used a hotel in the past, it was a very big price difference. So not knowing where to even check is going to be a problem for me.
San Jose State and CSU Dominguez Hills have been past locations, and Samuel Merritt University in Oakland. So those
also gone to West Coast and Los Angeles.
And West Coast.
Yeah, I mean, so if you guys
August, nobody's going to be open in August. None of these schools are going to be.
That's true. We do like to do outreach as well. So.
But if we have connections to schools and we ask them,
yes,
can we get a meeting space, even though there are no students in session? I mean, if we got a meeting location and the students are local, they may come anyways, right?
They may, definitely up to you guys. I know that in the past, we wanted to make sure that they were in session at some point so that we could have outreach and have the participation. But
so the next question I have is, do we have a, barrier range of, if we say San Francisco, we can do anywhere in San Francisco Bay Area? Yes.
I think so, but I'm not sure on that. I can't, yeah.
We have in the past, well, I didn't mean to respond, our attorney would answer that, but what I would tell you is we've gone to Oakland, we've gone to San Jose.
That's true.
We've gone to, those are the things we've done. Board Member Pavlovich, you have your hand up again. Let's go to you.
President Miller, another option might be for some of those facilities like USC, they have partnerships with WeWork sites. You know, that people that happen a lot was very good. They commented, they created contracts with buildings that are already in effect, right, to work offsite. And maybe that might be an option. If they already have a contract, they might loan us their WeWork space at no cost. And that might be something that we might look into.
Okay. Thank you for that. So I think what's before us, we can still come up with possible locations. I think what we've heard from board staff, and any board member can participate in this. It doesn't have to just, so for example, if you are board members who are from San Francisco and you have connections in locations, or you know of a university connected to WeWorks, like Dr. Pavlovich said, then by all means, feed that information to Jody. likewise, Southern California counterparts will do the same thing. And Carlin, does USC have a, no, I'm kidding. I'll just take care of mine now. But the point being, was there a comment? Were you commenting, Hector?
I was just thinking,
I was going to comment.
in terms of, what's the Jesuit? The University of San Francisco?
Yeah, that's my school.
That's a possibility.
They have a Pleasanton campus. That's what I was thinking of asking out. If we could use their Pleasanton campus.
And again, in the individual locations, by all means, feed that to Ms. Casetta. What's before us right now is really the city. Vice President Marcos?
Well, I was just going to ask Richard because he definitely helped out before with the Kaiser space. That was convenient.
Yeah, we had an email that came out where they're reserving for next year back several months ago, and I sent it to Heather asking if we should try to get in on any of the dates and locations, because all the departments jump on the meeting space. So I don't know if that's still going to be available or not, because it's a strange process that we have.
But it's free, right? When we used it, it was free.
Yeah, I can try to get it through somebody at each of the, if it's San Leandro, I have to get somebody at San Leandro to do it. If it's San Francisco, I can do it because I work in San Francisco, so there's a little bit of a.
Santa Rosa?
Yeah, Santa Rosa, yeah.
You know what?
I could ask David and Rose to do it, yeah. I have to.
So can we, in the, because of time, can we, the board members that have ideas, can we just email Jody and give her our connections, or if we do our own little thing and see if we can get these dates, and then give Jody the lead, and hopefully we can book something? Because I think we all have connections, we just have to think about it, but, so we can get to closed session.
Maybe we can safely avoid the San Jose area, because that one, no matter what, they were like some of the not so nice hotels, and the prices were always super expensive because of Silicon Valley. So, but Oakland, we had some good options.
Well, that's what I was thinking about East Bay. That's what I was asking about that, because I think like if we did Pleasanton, Dublin, Livermore, the hotel costs there are cheaper, and we could, if I can get someone to let us use the USF Pleasanton campus, I mean, that's easy to get to because BART's right there too, so.
Yeah.
So again, thank you for all those comments. So again, in terms of possible locations, that's what we have before us, and we do need a motion on, we have our dates, our possible locations, so that board has an action there. We know that if things come up and happen, it'll come back to us and we'll have to revisit it, but right now, what's before us and what board's asking for us is for meetings or locations for the 3 remaining dates, right? Okay. So so back to, anybody want to?
I'll make a motion. I'll move that the board will look at, everything. So I'll make a motion that the board will keep the locations suggested by the President Miller for locations for board meeting to be held in May of 2023, August 2023, and November of 2023, with possibilities in the May meeting to be in San Diego, August meeting to be in the Bay Area, ideally San Francisco or Oakland, and November meeting to be in Los Angeles area.
So we have a board motion. We need a second.
Second.
So the board motion was by Vice President Morcos. The second was by Secretary Doe. Do we have any public input from our audience? And how about on the WebEx?
This is a moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
I would, and I'd also, just because we do have many participants, those of you who are practitioners who live in any of these areas that understand what we're up against, if you listen to Ms. Quesada speak, if she has to go and get a contract, it takes much longer for us to do our outreach in person. If we go to a location that's existing like a university, we by all means can do that. So if you live in any of those areas and you also know you have access, this is an outreach to you as well, and we thank you very much for that. All right. With that being said, we are going to convene. We got to vote. Oh, let's vote. Thank you.
Board Member Bookwalter,
Aye.
Board Member Cabrera,
Aye.
Board Member Palhowicz.
Aye.
Vice President Marcos.
Aye.
Secretary Dow, aye, and President Miller.
Yes.
Motion carries.
So what's before us now as a board is that we are going to convene in closed session. When we go into closed session, we will only be reopening for a minute. So if you are one of our participants, it may not serve you well to stay and hear us come back on for a minute. But we are starting again tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. We will be going over items 8. We will also address items 13, 14, 15, and 16, which is specifically, and we'll take those earlier in the agenda for those of you who wanted to hear from them today, and we'll start again. So with that being said, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn into closed session, and the time is 3:38 p.m.